So I went to the Ignite conference this weekend, and I say the word conference because it has a very different feeling than a lot of festivals, in that, in the same way that Burning Man, I think, is more of a conference than a festival. And by that I mean that a conference, while you may go to see speakers, generally a good conference, everyone there is a participant. They are, they are practicing in whatever area. And so Ignite is, it's people who perform fire all over the place throughout the year, and then they come together and they kind of play and perform and learn from one another, and it's just so inspiring. At the same time, I find it very intimidating. I realize how far I can go, how much I have to learn and work through in terms of my comfort in being a learner, in being a novice. And one of the things I really admire in this community of flow performer people and flow practitioners is that acceptance of the novice in themselves, and is that embracing of the learning, and in the way that the people help one another and teach one another, and are comfortable in that state of sucking. Because you've got to be. It's kind of a recurring theme for me lately is working through some of that discomfort I've talked about in the past, when I was at a stage in my life when I was trying to get into yoga. There are two parts of it that I find challenging. One is the physical part, learning to move and stretch and work through tightness in the body in ways that I hadn't before. But the more challenging part for me was to move through tightness in my beliefs and attitudes and fears about not knowing what I'm supposed to be doing, about where I should put my mat, about am I doing it right, or how long is this going to be, and all the mental things. I just wanted to leave. I wanted to quit. And that is an ongoing struggle for me. In fact, someone asked me at the festival, they said, what kind of yoga do you like to do? And I said, I like to do yoga that has a consistent flow. I like to learn a flow, meaning a series of postures, that then every time I go to the class, it's the same, so that I can just kind of zone out, and I know what's coming next, and I can really focus on being present and getting better, and better meaning, more accurate postures, and being more aware of subtleties of it as I learn more and more what's supposed to be happening. And what I don't like, some people love going to a new yoga class with new teachers and like, oh, now let's do this, and now let's do this, and in a kind of almost like spontaneous flows where you're kind of listening to the directions and then doing them. To me, that I'm always a little anxious about trying to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing. And that anxiousness about what am I supposed to be doing is something that is a big source of potential growth for me. I mentioned recently that I started doing a little bit of surfing, and I stopped surfing. Maybe not stopped, maybe that's the wrong word. I haven't been back for the last couple weeks. Meanwhile, my roommates are surfing like almost every day, and they love it. And to me, it's so intimidating to paddle out, especially as it's getting warmer and it's getting more crowded. It's like that mental discomfort of being awkward, of not knowing what I should be doing, of being in people's way, of that. And so, as I went to Ignite this weekend and saw all these people who are so good at that learning state, and by being good at the learning state is the only way you can get good at anything and have any sort of mastery. And as I was so impressed by that, and it reminded me of how I've been that way lately with surfing, and I really was kind of struggling a little bit and kind of getting, in one way it was a cool reminder of a place that I need to put in some focus and some time and some energy. On the other hand, it was also just like a sometimes when you get the mirror held up and you don't like what you see, it's not always fun. Monica says that Maston Kipp talks the same way about wanting to quit yoga. Well, I think a lot of us, as Winkle just says, I know where you're coming from. And it kind of, on a big picture, you really, I think, and maybe I need to amend my list of ways to find happiness or ways to find a fulfilling life. You really need to embrace sucking or failing. Nobody who's great at anything got there without sucking. And maybe that's a harsh word. Maybe what I mean is embrace the novice. Embrace the state of not knowing, the beginner's mind, beginner's perspective. Because that fear of failing, that fear of not looking good, that fear of judgment or awkwardness or any of those things is that is a wall that will keep you from big, wonderful things. What's that phrase like? Everything you want is right outside the limits of your comfort zone. So that was a big pro and con of this weekend. I was so inspired, and then also so kind of humbled. And it was an interesting contrast because there was I learned a lot over the weekend, and I had a lot of kind of awarenesses, and just randomly I'll share some of them. So one is, I got there, there was traffic, and so I got there at about 12:10, and I was supposed to speak at 12:30. So, and I was like in the car looking like, okay, I have to speed if I'm going to make it. I'm like, I had like a little, my phone was telling me like when I was anticipated there, and I was like, okay, I got to go 80 miles an hour at least, or else I'm not going to make it. So I'm like, through the desert, but I made it just in time. Looking back, having an extra 30 minutes would have made such a big difference, because what I realized when I got there, it was hot. I didn't realize how hot it was, and I didn't realize how many people were not participating in the classes because it was so hot. And so the fact that I was actually just offering a talk in the shade was great. I was scheduled to be at lunch, so I was a little self-conscious about ending in time so I didn't interfere other people's classes or whatever. And so I think if I had been there earlier, I would have slowed down, I would have taken some time, I would have made sure everybody felt included. But because I got there kind of rushing and wasn't sure about the situation and everything, I didn't slow down like I would have liked to in retrospect. Another thing that I learned about myself and my process as I was there was, I think there's two things that Hug Nation is. Well, maybe there's a lot of things, but there are two things that struck me as after I looked back at the talk I gave. And one of them is the actual thoughts and lessons and kind of, I guess the lessons, the actual topic that we talk about each week. And the other part is just the vibration and the love and the gratitude. And it's funny because I'm very clear about how that was the case when I did Hug Nation with Grandpa. And there was the talking that we did to get all on the same page, but that was all really just an excuse to get on the same page and vibration so that we could share the gratitude, we could share the moment of hug connection, so we could share the love. And I guess I kind of, it normally is just such a natural thing that I don't think about it, but after I'd done the talk at Joshua Tree, I realized that I wish I had spent more time just in the love place, just in the acknowledgement of almost like the meditative being present part of it. because you know that's really the magic thing. There's this, at least I don't know. Maybe I'm overanalyzing things. But like I think that people come to a Hug Nation talk or one of my I don't know what the not really a class. I said, "Oh, you're giving a class?" I'm like, "Oh, I guess I'm just going to share and talk." But I think people come, one, to hear what I have to say, and two, just to recalibrate in the way that we do here. And I wish I would have given him a little bit more time to the recalibration, and maybe even opened it up more for discussion, because as it is a conference, there is so many things that people have to share. And there were a lot of people that were offering suggestions as I was talking, and somebody mentioned, one of the things that I shared, it was the importance of listening. Somebody mentioned that that they learned a lot as training to be an actor, that how underrated listening is. Because even though you're giving the same lines over and over again, you really need to be present and listening to the way your fellow actors are delivering their lines and the whole feeling of the scene, so that you can give your lines. It's not in a vacuum. You have to be listening. And I was like, that's a really, that's a good parallel to speaking. In the situation of Hug Nation, on a Monday when we do it in the chat room, the listening is a little bit different. I kind of every once in a while check in the chat room to see if the camera's down, and then after we talk, I kind of check in the chat room. But in a live situation, it's a much more significant listening experience, where people are maybe actually saying things and raising their hand and offering things that they want to talk about or share, or just noticing the reactions and staying on a topic longer or moving through a topic. I also learned a lesson for myself that I need to, normally I print out notes and I waste trees instead of having it online. And this time, because of the timing, I just had it on I had my Google Doc open on my phone that I consulted, and I kept having all sorts of closing, and I had to go back to the page and open it up again, and I felt like I didn't do. It was a disservice to those who had showed up for me to be like, "Oh, wait, hold on, 1 second." What else did I learn this weekend? And so, I guess there was this part of, there were some people that were there that were extremely complimentary, and in fact were very much looking forward to either meeting me or sharing a story with me. And I need to be more conscious and aware of how sometimes I play that role for people. And by that I mean that, by all sorts of, partially by my practice, partially by just the flow, and partially by my just sharing so much over so many years, there are a number of people who have heard a lecture or a talk or watched a Hug Nation or seen a video or whatever, and it has hit them at the right time and been the right message that they needed to hear. And so that's amazing. And it's so cool when somebody, tells me that, or reminds me, or shares something that they went through, or that because they know, they heard me talk about this, that they know that they can share something that they've experienced, or some growth, or some. Someone shared with me this incredible story of floating more, and how that they, over the last month, had just been kind of surrendering to all these opportunities that kept coming, and it brought them to this just magical scenario after scenario after scenario. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. And he just wanted to share it with me, and I thought it was so cool. Thank you, Binkle. Zay says, I don't play that role. I am an inspiring person. Well, thank you. And I guess what I mean by play the role, meaning that we're all midway on the journey, and we all have fluctuations, and we all, and so the role, meaning that like a therapist, they aren't someone necessarily who has got no mental problems. They're someone who can play the role, and they know the tools, and they can help you to get to someplace that to in yourself. No one, someone isn't therapy to you. They help you get to your own realizations, and I think that that's that kind of role. And so in that practice, I can play a I don't know. I think it's still a role because I'm there's a talk I gave a while back called "I'm a fuck up, I am divine." Where and I talked about this over the weekend actually with some friends, and how I was saying that I think there's some people who are almost not even people, who are so spiritually evolved that they are just reflections of the divine, like pure, like Amma, like Guji, or how you ever say his name, Goji, or there's like Krishnamurti, like people who are ascended masters. And I think everyone else is human being, and the human beings have that experience of at times total oneness and divine presence, and times of very human frustration. And it's that fluctuation and trying to spend more time in the divine realm and less time in the human realm. Human meaning suffering, but still, it's the ride. I'm not even sure how fun it would be to just be in the divine state all the time. I kind of feel like I have eternity to spend in the divine state. It's the human experience that I'm here for. But when I talk about role, I mean that when I record videos and stuff, it's often when I'm in my higher states that I'm sharing from that place, and I'm dialed into that in a stronger way. And so when the role is when somebody has been able to experience me in that state, and so they want to interact with me from that place of well, the great thing is that there's no better way to like, if you want someone to act honest, treat them like they're honest. If you want someone to act courageous, treat them like they're courageous. If you want someone to act like they are wise, treat them like they're wise. So when someone comes to me and treats me like I know a thing or two, it's very easy for me to access that part of myself and be present in that way. And so there were some people that I interacted with over the weekend that it was just a real honor to receive their thoughts from that place, and then also to hear them and be inspired by them. So I had this weekend where some of my experiences were this feeling of like, oh wow, I have really gotten to a wonderful place. I'm very proud of what I share in the world. And then other parts of the weekend where I'm like, wow, I have so much work to do in this area. And I guess that's how it always is. Sasha's saying that I've been in. Well, I am honored to have played a role, and I think that that's the teachers that have been the most impactful to me are the ones that do not teach from a place of certainty, but from a place of sharing the path. And so that is really the perspective and the stance that I try to, when I don't feel like I'm in a position to state anything with authority, but I am in a position to share my journey and my path, and how this path is, I feel like there is growth, and and then but it is a practice, and if I don't practice as much, then I got to learn that, got to remind myself of that. I had a couple things. Just a couple days ago, I had this experience that would like, oh yeah, I'm doing better. I took out the recycling, and the recycling was like almost full in the bin, and so I was like having to place one bottle at a time in the recycling bin, and ended up dropping one on the ground, and it shattered. And there was a time in my life when I would have been like, fuck! And then I would have been like, God damn it, I would have gone inside and found a broom and gone and swept it up and put it in the trash and swept it. Then I would have been gotten into my car, gone to work, started the work day, and I would have been 5 minutes late to work, and I would have had 15 minutes of anger. But what I did instead was, went and got a broom, swept it up, put it in the trash, got in my car, and I drove to work. And I was 5 minutes late to work, and in both situations, the bottle got cleaned up. But in the situation, the second one, the one that I was able to do last week, I didn't have to carry that anger and burden and stress with me. I just did the task at hand. And so that was, for me, like, oh, cool. This is an awareness that I'm practicing, and by practicing, it gets easier. I had some struggles over the weekend, actually, and yesterday ended up having to, like, okay, I need to really, like, focus and kind of practice. And so, I went for a walk and ran some errands and, took a shower and did things that I knew would kind of shake off and be aware that I listened to a Jacob Glass lecture on A Course in Miracles as well. And so that all these things that kind of like helped me to get in balance. And that's the journey, right? It's the getting better and better and building up your toolkit so that when you do struggle, you hopefully can get back on track quicker. Katie Saver says one of her favorite quotes by Penny Tompkins is, "Become comfortable with not knowing." That's a good one. I like, someone phrased it to me one time, learn to sit in the question, which I really like. All right, let's do this. Let's have ourselves a hug. So wherever you are, grab yourselves by the shoulders. And know that this body houses your thoughts, and it gives you the ability to perceive and feel. And beneath all of these experiences of the world is this bright, shining light, that if we do nothing, that light shines brightly. In fact, we need do nothing to let it shine. We just need to work on removing the barriers, as Rumi said. And let the love shine. And when we are together in a time like this, whether live or archived, just knowing that there are people out there in the same space of trying to get through and release and let go of the layers on top of them and let their divine light shine. Let that vibration guide them. Let themselves be their highest selves. Not being guided by what they should do, not being guided by fear or anxiety or shoulds, but surrendering. I find a great comfort in knowing that you are out there, and that we are out there, and that we are all connected as part of this one thing, this one magnificent shining light, this vibrant love vibration that when we can get still, we can feel connected to it. And we can let that be our purpose. Not to do anything, but to be loving. And to let that love vibration guide us, inform us, comfort us. Let's take 3 breaths together. And as we inhale, just feel that love fill us up. And then as we exhale, share it with the world. Inhale love. Share it with the world. Inhale love. Share it with the world. Inhale love. Share it with the world. On behalf of Grandpa Caleb and all the Love Warriors, happy Hug Nation. I love you. I am honored to reflect and to receive who you are in the world. I love you. Namaste.